Abak, we're going to start this meeting, sir. Okay. I was just waiting for you to finish. Okay. You ready, Abak? You ready? Whenever you're ready, we're ready. Okay. Thank you. Welcome. This is the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. I'm Chairman Weezer. I've been joined by Vice Chair Marquise Harris-Dawson, Councilmember Cedillo, and Councilmember Felipe Fuentes. We will start with item number 6, which is a report from the Director of Planning. Welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember Weezer and members of the committee. Real quick, just a couple items for you. One of them is that on Saturday, we had our public hearing for the City Planning Commission that's held at the staff level for the home sharing ordinance. That's the ordinance regarding short-term rentals in people's homes. That was very well attended, over 500 attendees. I would say probably about evenly split in terms of their support to either allow for broader home sharing throughout the city or not. We're expecting to bring that to the City Planning Commission sometime towards the end of June. We'll be, given the very large turnout we had, we'll be looking for having the appropriate size location for that. The other item is a matter of on personnel, which is the fact that we've had a vacant position for Deputy Planning Director for probably over a year, and that position we announced filling that, which will be with Kevin Keller, who has previously served in the Planning Department and has been serving under Mayor Garcetti as his Planning Policy Director. And so there will be a transition period for Mr. Keller coming from the Mayor's office to the Planning Department. And with that, that concludes my report.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Mr. Bertoni, our Planning Director? Seeing none, we will receive and file this item. And we will move on to item number 3, which is the final ordinance for the LAX Specific Plan Amendment. We will approve this on consent unless there are any objections. No objections, so ordered. Item number 3 on consent. We will now move on to item number 1. And Mr. Mejia, if you could read that into the record, please.
Item 1, Councilman, is a motion by Mr. Bonin Buscaino. It's directing the Planning Department to initiate a general plan amendment and a zone change along Westchester Street in CD 11.
Welcome. Is staff here on this item?
It's a motion, Councilman.
Okay,
so
can we get... all right, well, let's start with public comment, and then we will move on to CD 11. Don Duckworth. Don Duckworth, are you here? There you are. Welcome.
This is about item 1, is that correct?
Yes.
I'm with the Westchester Streetscape Improvement Association. We're involved in this project. It's part of a landscape entry project into the community of Westchester, and we support it very much. The entire community supports it, the Neighborhood Council, the Chamber of Commerce, the BID, and many other organizations. So we would urge you to do so as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Tricia Keene, Council District 11.
Good afternoon. Tricia Keene, Director of Land Use and Planning for Council District 11. This project involves changing the zoning and general plan designation of some small parcels that are located on an important part of the Westchester streetscape. We're asking that your committee direct planning to initiate the general plan amendment and zone change and direct the other departments to take the necessary steps that would allow the city to obtain ownership of these parcels. In our conversations with the city attorney and the departments who will be working on this, we have a couple of clarifications to the motion that we'd like to ask you to approve. First would be to revise the second moving clause to say, I further move that the City Council direct the Department of General Services, with the assistance of the City Attorney, to commence negotiations for the acquisition of the aforementioned 13 strip lots, and thereafter report back to Council and present the acquisition agreements for Council consideration and approval. And then to add a new moving clause at the end to say, I further move that upon completion of the transfer of title of the strip lots to the city, the Planning Department take all necessary steps to finalize the general plan amendment and zone change for the strip lots. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did City Clerk get those amendments? Okay. So any questions or comments on this? There's no questions or comments. We will approve the motion as amended by CD11 and send it to staff. Any objections? No objections? Thank you. So ordered. Item number 4. Item 4. 4 and 5 are related. We will take them separately. We will begin with item 4.
So item 4, Councilman, is the track map for this mixed-use project in CD10. The appellant on record is listed as William Dickey from the La Cienega Heights Association, and item 5 relates to the same project, but the entitlements herein are the general plan amendment and the zone change.
Okay. Staff here to briefly present on this item. We heard this item a week ago or a couple of weeks ago, and it's back.
Sergio
Welcome.
Ibarra, planning staff. Good afternoon, council members. Before you is the Jefferson La Cienega project, CPC-2015-2593, with the associated CEQA case of ENV-2014-4755-EIR and vesting tentative track map 73656-CN. The City Planning Commission conditionally approved the project on March 10th, 2016 for a project consisting of up to 1,218 residential units with 55 dwelling units for households earning up to 120% AMI or moderate income and 300,000 square feet of commercial floor area. The applicant's proposed project was for 1,218 dwelling units at market rate, and the planning department had recommended 1,210 units as a result of denying the applicant's request for a zoning administrator's adjustment of minimum lot area from 400 square feet to 394 square feet, thereby lowering the total residential units from the proposed 1,218 units to the recommended 1,210 units. The project applicant has submitted a request letter on May 10th proposing a queue condition that limits the project to the planning department's recommended 1,210 dwelling units with the option of providing 55 dwelling units for households earning up to 120% AMI. This request is for your consideration today, and the planning department is ready to make any necessary changes to implement your recommendation. Other substantive requests by the applicant include that the project's restrooms be available to the public at a minimum from dawn to dusk rather than the planning department conditioned hours of operation being those the same as the retail uses, and that the proposed solar panel roof plan be flexible enough to allow alternative layouts as long as the magnitude of expected energy output remains the same. The applicant also has minor technical and clerical corrections to the staff report, and planning staff will be available to answer any questions regarding these requests after the hearing for this case. And finally, there is an appeal. An appeal was filed on April 11th, 2016 to the City Planning Commission's action relative to the appeal of VTT-73656-CN-1A and its actions and recommendations of CPC-2015-2593. The Planning Department is ready to answer any questions or concerns regarding this appeal at the end of today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no questions now. We will turn to public comment and start with the appellant or their representative. It's Hall?
Yes, sir.
Is it Jamie or?
Jamie, yes.
Jamie Hall. Okay.
Although I was called Jaime sometimes when I was a kid.
Okay.
My name is Jamie Hall. I'm an attorney. I'm with Channel Law Group, and I represent...
I'm sorry, before you begin, 5 minutes each for the appellant and the applicant, and then each public speaker after that has 1 minute. Just want to set the rules up front. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And I represent the appellant, the La Cienega Heights Association. There were some questions raised about who is the La Cienega Heights Association at the last hearing, and I think it's important for you to understand who we are. There's always a moment when neighborhood associations are formed. They don't just come out of thin air, and a lot of times they come and out of a moment when there's a project that excites people or angers people or that they're concerned about, and that is the the results here. The La Cienega Heights Association is a neighborhood association that was formed recently because they had concerns about this project right across the street from them. So the La Cienega Heights Association, like many other neighborhood associations, was formed for the express purpose of improving and preserving the quality of life for the community. And so what we have done is we have 82 members at this point, and we have circulated a petition since our last hearing that basically lays out the mitigation measures that we believe the city should implement in order to ensure that the environmental impacts associated with the project, specifically the traffic impacts, are mitigated. And we have 82 members of the community, and I have right here 82 people who have signed that live in this community that say there are very specific concrete mitigation measures that we want explored. We want some cul-de-sacs in our neighborhood to avoid cut-through traffic. We want enhancements to the crosswalks where already people are getting hurt on Jefferson trying to cross the crosswalk. We want the bus stop relocated. And these are not frivolous issues. The EIR for the project specifically said there are significant, unavoidable environmental impacts, specifically with regard to traffic. So here, we have hired an expert, someone who's worked for the city for 34 years as our expert, Mr. Alan Rifkin, who will come after me. And he's the one who has looked at the EIR, that's looked at the traffic report that was conducted in the EIR, and that said these are specific things that you can do in order to reduce the impacts. They're feasible, they can be achieved, they have the support of the community. We have 82 people who have represented that they are both a member of the La Cienega Heights Association and they support these mitigations. So I would ask you to ensure that this big project, and it is big, and it's going to be unprecedented, is fully mitigated. That's what we're here to do today. We're not here to, unnecessarily create problems. We're here to propose solutions. And so with that, I'd like to turn this over to our expert, Mr. Alan Rifkin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to respond to some comments that were made at our May 10th hearing. The main point is I made a statement that it would only take 5% of the traffic to trigger a significant impact in this residential neighborhood. The applicant's traffic engineer used 1%, and I again want to restate that there's nothing magic about 5%. What I was questioning is how did the traffic engineer come up with 1% as a reasonable assumption? In my short letter to you, there's a map on page 3 that again restates what might happen in this neighborhood. The intersection of Jefferson and La Cienega is significantly impacted. Level service F states no mitigation measures are possible for that. Because of that congestion, is it reasonable that the number of cars, and about 3,300 cars a day, or 33% of the total traffic, would go to the east? Wouldn't it be reasonable that they would do this cut through instead of trying to sit through the congestion at Jefferson and La Cienega? And so I ask that the project be conditioned for a neighborhood traffic management plan for this neighborhood. And I've listed a number of things that could be included reasonably without high costs. And I urge your committee to make that addition. Otherwise, this environmental impact report is not responsive. Thank you.
You're entitled to an additional minute if you would like that, Mr. Rifkin, or is that your presentation?
That's my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Ed Casey for the applicant representative, and Niels Cotter.
Thank you, council members, for giving us the opportunity to present this fantastic project. My name is Niels Cotter, and I oversee development for Carmel Partners. Although in the last hearing I've shared some background and highlights of the project already, I'm happy to have a little more time to share some more highlights of the project. Beyond the 1 acre park plaza that I mentioned 2 weeks ago, we actually have a second outdoor plaza on the corner of Jefferson and La Cienega, and that's designed for to sort of welcome the folks coming off the expo stop and about to get onto the expo stop and give them a peaceful place to rest, go buy fresh fruits and vegetables, and have a coffee or something while they wait. So very excited about a secondary sort of green space. We also, right around the corner from that space, will have a mobility hub where we'll have a place where you can rent bicycles and return them to the same location so that people have the flexibility of traveling by bicycle. We are also enhancing the local community garden, which I mentioned some of the improvements there. And finally, another highlight is we will be focusing very much on the local contractors in the immediate community to help create jobs and opportunities, and we'll be creating a program there. Some of the highlights of the support we've received to date: Neighborhood Council, Neighborhood Business Council, Baldwin Hills Village Gardens HOA, Dorsey High School, Baha'i Faith Center, Vineyard Senior Center, LA Bike Coalition, and Good Earth LA. In closing, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all those who have taken their time and effort, again, to come out and show support for our project. Very, very much appreciate that. And on behalf of the majority of those in the room today, I truly hope the Planning Commission will recommend approval of the projects with the modifications requested per the May 5th letter submitted from Rosenheim Associates. Thank you so much for your time and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Ed Casey, the applicant's legal counsel, just to address a couple of points raised by the appellant. The appellant last time, as well as another person, submitted two lengthy letters talking about general plan compliance issues. We did address those in our letter to the committee dated yesterday, which we have also provided to the city attorney. Two main points there. It is very clear from the documents in this file that the general plan amendment requested for this project was properly initiated by the director with all the requisite documentation. Number two, all the findings are required under the city's charter as well as general plan have been made, they've been addressed, and they are more than supported by substantial evidence. And that's all covered in our letter. On the issue of neighborhood cut-through traffic, we did address that also in two prior submittals. At the last committee hearing, we also brought along the project traffic consultant, Mr. Gibson, who's here again today to address any issues, but I think, frankly, he's addressed that all last time as well. And there are some additional traffic mitigation measures that are not related to cut-through traffic. Cut-through traffic was studied, and they concluded there were no significant impacts, but there were some additional mitigation measures that were provided to DOT and planning that, even though we think they're financially infeasible, inappropriate, we are willing, if the committee believes they're appropriate, to have them approved as well. And I'm here for any other questions.
Great. Not now. We'll call you up if there are questions. Thank you. Okay, now we'll go to the remainder of the public comment, 1 minute each. Eva Marie Aubrey, Willard Love, and Helen Hall.
Good afternoon. My name is Eva Aubrey. I'm with West Adams Neighborhood Council, SLANK, South Los Angeles, Alliance of Neighborhood Council, and all of these lovely ladies here from Vineyard Seniors. Stand up, stand up. And we are here to support this project. I know they said we're going to have a lot more traffic, but we already have traffic. They can't stop it. When they built the Santa Monica Freeway, they said it was going to take the traffic off the street. Matter of fact, when they built the Harbor Freeway, they said they were going to take traffic off the street. As long as people come here, we're going to have traffic. We want it, we support it, and please do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Willard Love. I am a member of the Baldwin Vista community, so I live in the community. I actually am a graduate of Dorsey High School. I'm here today representing Dorsey High School. We've had an opportunity to attend all three meetings. We appreciate the support that you provided. The last two meetings we've had students. This time we don't, because 2 weeks we have graduation, so our students are in finals. But we are here. I'd like our community representative and our parent reps to stand up from Dorsey High School and give them a hand. Thank you very much, and we support this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen Hall, Robin Bernard, Valeria Hatcher, and Alida Bernal.
Good afternoon. I'm Helen Hall. I am here with a group of people from the Baldwin Hills Village Gardens Homes Association. I have lived in this neighborhood for over 52 years. Since that time, we have worked very hard to maintain the values in our neighborhood. We have fought battles to keep them so that the neighborhood is desirable. A couple of months ago, we had 2 illegal businesses that moved in, unknown to any of us, but once we found out, we had to fight to get them out of the neighborhood. These are not the kind of businesses that we want. This is not what we want to happen to our neighborhood. Carmel Developers has submitted a proposal for a plan that will bring revitalization, give us rebirth in our area, and restore our neighborhood, maintain our values in the way that we are accustomed to. And I urge you to support this measure. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Bernard. I've lived in this neighborhood since 1971 and found it to be a wonderful neighborhood. And we have, as a homeowners association, have come to really greatly appreciate this new project that's going to be available for us. And we like the idea that there'll be many more dining options and high-quality restaurants choices that will be available in our neighborhood, because at the present time we have no high-quality restaurants. Also, the fact of more walkable and bikeable environment that lessens impact on traffic and air quality by promoting alternatives to driving. But I wanted you to know that the Baldwin Hills Homeowners Association has been incorporated since 1946, and because of many valuable people, we support this project. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Alida Bernal. I stand here today along with several of my neighbors that live directly across the street from the proposed project, and for those that could not attend, have provided signatures to again also declare our support for this exciting new development. I have lived in the same house in this community for over 30 years, and until very recently, like many of my neighbors, we have not heard of the La Cienega Heights Association. We don't know their agenda, and we are not a part of their association. My neighbors and I are here as a group of community residents to reiterate, as before, our support for the developer's project. Carmel Partners has been very good about reaching out to the community, and we look forward to continue working with them together in a constructive, transparent, and respectful manner. The developer has been great about being forthcoming and accessible to all of us, answering all of our questions and concerns of the development. We ask that you move forward with approving the project. Thank you.
Helen Orul, Dora Street, Mayuri Tatbunrog, Maribel Mendoza. Helen, pass. Dora Street, pass. Mayuri, Maribel Mendoza. Hani Abdullah. Elmer Brobson, Carol Simmons, Frankie Castaneda, Martin Klauser, S.T. Abraham Das Trust, Opal Young. So first is Martin Klauser.
S.D. Abraham.
Okay, you want to go first? S.D. Abraham? Yes.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is S.D. Abraham. I am the property owner on La Cienega Boulevard, directly across the street from this project. In fact, I own both city blocks directly across the street, the 3200 block and the 3300 block of South La Cienega Boulevard, except for the Chevron gas station and the Starbucks. And if this project is approved, and it should be approved, I'm willing to invest $40 million of my money to invest in my property, to improve my property. I think this is a once-in-a-generation project. I don't think I'm a big property owner in the city of Los Angeles, and I don't think I've ever seen, other than Playa Vista, that I was involved with, other than anything bigger than this. And I think once this is approved, it should be approved, and this is a once-in-a-generation project, and I urge you to vote yes on this so we can enjoy it, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marty Klauser. I represent Mr. Abraham. I'm a broker. I live in Playa del Rey. I work in this area. I have a lot of clients. One of the things that nobody's really mentioned is that the Carmel Partners Project provides significant stimulus, economic stimulus to the area, the community. This area has been underserved. The proximity of the Expo line and its connecting to 87 stations and 100 miles of rail will help reduce total miles driven, reduce traffic and congestion, will reduce emissions, which are causing global climate change. I am strongly in favor of this project, and I would request that you deny the appeal and approve the project. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Opal Young. I'm chair of Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Homeowners Coalition. I've lived in the area for more than 50 years. I love the fact that some other company has noted some interest in the area, the way we have kept it for years and years. One of the things that I want to make note of, the Baldwin Hills area is majority of African American people. We need employment, and I would appreciate it if they would give Baldwin Hills African Americans total consideration of employment on the project. Thank you.
Stephen Meeks, Leslie Graham, Damian Goodman, and that's it. We have CD 10 after that. Welcome.
Hi.
Can we state your name, please?
Leslie Graham. I'm a resident who lives east of this site. I attended the West Adams Neighborhood Council meetings where they discussed and voted on this project. There wasn't much discussion of the project. There wasn't any questions about why do they need 2,000 parking spaces if it's transit-oriented development. I'm happy that they've added the provision for workforce housing. I just want to ask the Planning Commission to go back and review the 3 zoning changes with closer scrutiny, because we are talking about the future and it does have huge impacts in so many ways other than traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Carlin from CD10. Oh, you're, yeah, Damian Goodman. Welcome.
Damian Goodman, Executive Director of the Crenshaw Subway Coalition. We again restate our objection to proceeding in this discussion without being given our full appellant rights, given the direct and specific actions by the City Planning Department to deny us notice of this hearing. The public testimony speaks to the need for sit-down restaurants for grocery stores. Well, that's a little bit weird because within the existing code, you can build sit-down restaurants and grocery stores. What are we about here? What are we here about today? We're here about the 29-story tower, this tower with 1,100 market rate units, the tower in which will have a drastic impact on this community and will have a domino effect in this community and throughout other transit-oriented communities throughout this city. The fact is, the plan as currently exists allows 45 feet. The applicant's asking for 320. The CPIO asked for 75 feet, up to 86. The applicant is asking for 320. There is a process which this city council adopted to have a CPIO for this area. You engage the community, you've engaged the community through the community plan, and you have allowed us to come to you and say that that was acceptable. When you allow someone to come in and literally build 3 times the height that the community has already agreed to and that you have found as important,
Time is up, Mr.
you
Goodman.
establish a horrible precedent.
Thank you.
So we'll see you at City Council tomorrow, and if the plans change, we'll see you in court.
Thank you. Elizabeth Carlin, CD10.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Elizabeth Carlin. I'm here on behalf of Council President Wesson. I'm here to ask for your support and to move this project forward today. As you can see from the attendance, there's support from our community and the council president himself. The applicant was very due diligent in their outreach. They've met with various community stakeholders prior to their submission on this land use issue and throughout the entire process. This is an ideal project location because it seeks to create a live-work hub that's 100 feet from the La Cienega Jefferson Expo Station. Its prime location for density, it really and truly is the definition of mixed use, as it incorporates housing for both sale and rental, as well as office space, retail, and open space. It will create jobs and bring investment to our city. The council president has expressed much support for the project and that he personally appeared before the Citywide Planning Commission to speak in favor of this issue. We concur with the new queue conditions proposed by City Planning and the applicant on this issue, and we ask that this body approve the project and bring this forward to full council. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there some items for planning staff? Were there some mitigation measures that were proposed at the last meeting or this meeting?
Good afternoon, Councilman. So yes, prior to the last meeting, a memorandum by the Goods and Transportation Consulting Group relative the traffic consultant on this project submitted additional mitigations that had been ironed out with Culver City relative to the traffic impacts there. So those are dated April 27th, and those are before you now. In response, the department feels that these can adequately be accommodated in your actions today by amending the queue conditions relative to the mitigation measures, and those can be updated upon your recommendation and approval and shared with the city clerk as soon as possible. If you have any questions on that, we can move on to the other issues if you're okay.
No, just CD10, are you familiar with those? The April 27th mitigation measures?
Yes, we're familiar.
And you concur with them?
We concur.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to address some of the appeal points that were brought up, I would like to first add that the traffic consultant hired by the appellant made a lot of statements and broad assertions relative to the traffic impacts, in particular that the 1% factor that was used to analyze traffic was not conservative enough and that he would like to see 5%. This is outside of our standard practice and methodology with DOT. He provides no substantive information that suggests that the 5% would give us any other indication other than what we've disclosed in the EIR. And the EIR acknowledges that there are significant and unavoidable impacts with respect to this project. It's not the intent of the EIR to mitigate all impacts, although that is a broad intent, but in its heart, its intention is to disclose all impacts related to the project, to identify all feasible mitigation measures associated with the project, and to acknowledge when necessary that some mitigation will not appropriately and feasibly mitigate all the impacts that are identified. To that end, the appellant and the appellant's traffic consultant provides no new numbers, provides no new calculation, and makes recommendations on mitigations that have no analysis to assure us, to assure the city, and to assure the neighborhood that these mitigations would adequately address or mitigate further any of the impacts that were analyzed in the EIR. It's very easy to say, I want X and I want Z, without providing any of the evidence to support that it would be effective. Second, relative to the general plan amendment and the zone change, this was initiated by the department as permitted in the city charter. The city charter permits us to consider amendments in whole or in part, either by the director, by the city planning commission, or the city council. This was initiated by the director. This is not an applicant-initiated initiative. This is the department's, the director's initiation of a general plan amendment. The general plan amendment and zone change is reflective of the existing West Adams, Baldwin Hills, Leimert Park Community Plan. While there are changes being proposed at the time that this project was initiated, it was based on it's the still relevant and the still active West Adams, Baldwin Hills, Leimert Park Community Plan, which at the time did not contemplate light rail or any kind of transit-oriented development at the site. And now that the Expo line is there, this is an appropriate contribution to the neighborhood with a true mix of transit-oriented development, producing multifamily housing, retail uses, and a grocery store that would be very convenient to the community. Furthermore, there were issues about the tract approval process of the GPA and the zone change. The Subdivision Map Act permits us to conditionally approve tract maps, and in this case, we conditionally approved the tract map to permit the development provided that the approvals for the CPC case, which includes the general plan and zone change and height district change, are approved. In the event that those are not approved, the tract map was conditioned so that the applicant would be required to modify it through the tract modification process. And in addition, there were some comments made about the CPIO. Again, it's not in effect. And in conclusion, the changes to the project, the applicant is requesting a reduction in the total allowable units from 1218 to 1210, irrespective of the affordability level assigned to each of the units. CEQA analyzes the entirety of the project relative to the intensity of the uses. The reduction from 1218 to 1210 would be covered within the maximum scope of the EIR, which covered up to 1,218 units. So the reduction in units from 1218 to 1210 is completely covered and is within the scope of the analysis of the EIR. And unless you have additional questions, that concludes the department's recommendations on the actions before you.
Great. Any questions or comments? No. Okay. So what's before us is the tract map, and have the mitigation measures recommended by LADOT been incorporated already, or those are being proposed here as well?
All the mitigation measures that are before you have been vetted by LADOT.
But are they? Do we have to?
So the ones that are outstanding are these that were issued on April 27th, and that's because these are mitigations that are within the boundaries of the city of Culver City, and the LADOT has no ability to enforce mitigations in another jurisdiction. So we waited for Culver City to submit these to us because they have jurisdiction over mitigations and improvements in their jurisdiction. So the Department of Transportation defers their mitigations in those jurisdictions to those agencies.
Okay. All right. So I will recommend that we deny the appeal and approve the project. And any objection to that? Second by Mr. Hurst Dawson. You're looking at me like. You're
denying the appeal and granting the map.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
That's on number 4.
That's a number 4.
Okay,
we're going to go on to number 5 now after this. Okay. So on number 4, we're denying the appeal and approving the map. Seconded by Mr. Harris Dawson.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Are you approving it with the changes that have been presented?
That's what I was trying to clarify.
Right,
We don't have to bring those for us for action, correct, if we approve the project?
Right. So the department will amend the mitigations to reflect the changes today and the language relative to the maximum allowable units based on your actions today. So those will be updated and shared with the clerk.
As amended by the April 27th LADOT.
Reflecting the mitigations on the April 27th memo.
We'll approve it as amended by the, reflecting the recommendations by LADOT. Okay, is that clear?
And the department's letter on May 5th, or the applicant's letter on May 5th relative to the queue conditions that were discussed earlier in our conversation.
Oh, yes. So we do need to include those. Okay. Yes. So a better motion would be to approve in part and deny in part, but we deny the appeal, and we are including the revised traffic mitigation measures as recommended by LADOT and the department's letter on the queue conditions. Action. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so ordered. Thank you. We will go on to item number 5 now, and if Mr. Mejia, you can read that into the record.
Sure. Item 5, Councilman, again, is the same appellant who filed the appeal on the site plan review, and what's also before you is the general plan amendment and the zone change.
Okay. We have a number of cards that ask to speak on both items. We've taken action on number 4 already. I will as required, go through the names again. It's a different agenda item which requires a separate public comment period. And this is on the general plan amendment, correct?
Yes. Initially, I thought that we took them together, Councilman.
It was recommended to me before the meeting that we take them separately.
Very
Is that accurate, City Attorney? Or can we?
You could do it that way. You did it that way, so that's the way you're doing it.
Okay. We could have taken them together. Well, that's not the advice I received. Okay. All right. So we've already taken one action, so we'll take a separate one now. Since we took it separately, now we're going to go through the public comment again. And I will call people up. If you want to pass, go ahead and pass. Jamie Hall.
Maybe I'll set a precedent here. It was my understanding that we were speaking on both items previously, so I don't have any additional comments.
So,
Hold on. Alan Rifkin. Ed Casey. Niels Cotter. Eva Marie Aubry. Willard Love. Helen Hall. Helen Hall. You going to speak, Helen Hall? Yes? No? Okay. All right. Robin Bernard. Valeria Hatcher. Alita Bernal. Helen O'Rourke. Dora Street. Mayuri Tata Bonrong. Maribel Mendoza. Hani Abdullah. Elmer Brobson. Carol Simmons. Frankie Castaneda. S.D. Abram. Martin Klauser. Opal Young. Stephen Meeks. Leslie Graham. Damian Goodman.
Council members, Damian Goodman on behalf of the Crenshaw Subway Coalition. As stated in our 700-page comment letter entered at the last Plum hearing, the record's response is devoid of any analysis of the ancillary impact to displacement from the imposition of 1,100 market rate units and then those that are above the area's median income and the surrounding community. Additionally, there was mentioned by the planning staff of a CPIO process, and it's it's very deceptive to not claim what that CPIO recommends. It's very deceptive to not claim what the West Adams Community Plan recommends. None of them recommend allowing this site to go to 320 feet. None of them recommend a third of that. They do allow, within those processes, the use of mixed use. Now, if you want to come to a conclusion that industrial land is not important, counter to the policies adopted by the City Council in the past, fine. But don't ask us to come to meetings. Don't ask us to go to meetings along these corridors and have us agree to a height, come to agree to a height, and just have a developer coming in and want to make hundreds of millions of dollars off a property. Last issue is this.
Your time is up, Mr. Goodman.
You're jeopardizing
Sorry.
your ability to use the code to incentivize affordable housing by allowing there to be absolutely no code. Where a developer can come in and just go 320, it's ridiculous.
Thank you. Clint Simmons.
Yes, sir. Good evening. I'm here today. Everyone is aware of the traffic problem. At the present time, the emergency vehicles are not allowed to use La Cienega to go out to Kaiser and Cedars Hospital. They use La Brea instead of La Cienega because of the traffic problem at the present time. And so you all can imagine what it would be like once the skyscraper is put in. Another area that I'm concerned with is raw sewage getting into Santa Monica Bay. The last time I was here, I passed out a document that where a temporary fix had been put in on the bridge where the Metro light rail crosses Bologna Creek. And if we have any kind of flooding, and there will be raw sewage getting into Bologna Creek, and if you think you have a problem with Heel or Bay at the present time, I'm sure the city of the city of Santa Monica will not approve that at all. So what I am saying is that I know you're going to make a decision based upon politics. To have a skyscraper put in a floodplain make no sense at all. Thank you for giving me a chance to express a viewpoint that I hope you all take into consideration.
Thank you. Chris Hannan.
Good afternoon, Honorable Council Member, Commissioners. On behalf of the Los Angeles Orange County's Building and Construction Trades Council, representing over 140,000 skilled craftsmen and women in the Los Angeles and Orange County area, we shouldn't be having a conversation about the benefits of a project that's, approaching 320 feet, project that has over 1.9 million square feet, without the benefits of the workers considered. You have a developer that's missed an opportunity here. The building trades has been active in the Los Angeles area for over 100 years, been creating opportunities for young and old of all ages. This is a missed opportunity to not have local hire and apprenticeship requirements and a project labor agreement. Thank you.
Elizabeth Carlin. Yes, thank you. So on this item, if we could approve this item and deny the appeal. Any objections? Second by Mr. Cedillo. No objections. Sir, if you could talk to the city clerk, please. Thank you.
Excuse me, Terry Kaufman, Mesilla City Attorney's Office. So you have the general plan amendment and zone change and height district change. Those are not before you on appeal. They're just before you by code and charter, and then you have the appeals also.
Okay. Thank you. Anything to add from the plan department? This time passed already. Okay. Thank you.
So I just want to clarify that, as we did with the track, that we're incorporating the mitigation measures that were analyzed, that were provided by Culver City on the April 27th memo, that we're incorporating the corrections to the conditions that were in the May 5th letter, and I think that's it.
Okay. So with no objection, let that be the order. So ordered. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next item.
The next item, Councilman, is item 2, which is the draft sign ordinance, as well as the report that you requested 30 days ago, which was a joint report from the CLA, the CAO, and the Planning Department relative to land use controls for off-site signs outside of sign districts and a revenue analysis. That report is before you, and in brief summary, we have identified the appropriate land use and zones wherein you could situate off-site signs outside of sign districts. The report also discusses distance from sensitive uses, as well as areas wherein you would continue to prohibit signs in the city, as well as additional standards and community benefits that would be appropriate. There's a discussion on private property versus city-owned property, as well as the findings of other cities, the cities of Sacramento in particular, Chicago, and West Hollywood. As well, there's a section on future reports that would be appropriate, issues that have yet to be completely vetted and basically reach a conclusion in this community, in this committee, and as well as the CAO discussion on the current gross receipts that the city generates as it stands today. And we have Mr. Tom Rothman from the Planning Department that we work with, as well as Mr. Jason Kylene from the CAO's office.
No, Thank you. Colleagues, item 2 continues this committee's ongoing effort to cull together a balanced approach to regulating signs both on and off-site based on a sound policy framework that takes into consideration the existing context of all our communities citywide with respect to, 1, securing an expanded, responsive, fully funded sign enforcement program, 2, ensuring community benefits provisions that enhance the city's ability to improve our streets and transit facilities and other public amenities, and 3, establishing a significant revenue stream that could help fund other priority citywide policy initiatives like affordable housing and homelessness. When we considered this back in April 19th, this committee asked the CLA, Planning, and CAO to return with a joint report that would help us identify the necessary land use controls for off-site signs anywhere in the city and a long overdue revenue analysis so that we may begin to understand how the city might structure a revenue sharing model. I want to thank staff for working so diligently to have this report prepared for discussion today. I, for one, am looking forward to seeing where this takes us. So with that, let's have staff present the item. Then we'll follow that by public comment, and then we will have questions and comments from the committee. So welcome and thank you for your report. That was very, very helpful for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tom Rothman from the Planning Department. Last month, this committee discussed 2 versions of the sign ordinance, the City Attorney's version and the City Planning Commission's version, both of which prohibit off-site signs outside of sign districts. At that meeting, this committee requested a report back on possible land use controls for off-site signs outside of sign districts and also a revenue analysis. So the Planning Department, in conjunction with the CLA and the CAO, prepared a report. And the Planning Department specifically looked at a variety of land use controls should the city permit signs outside of sign districts, so such as linking the location of signs to appropriate general plan land use designations, and those are the land use designations where zones are grouped together under thematic themes, or thematic categories. 2, we looked at identifying certain sensitive uses for distancing buffers, and 3rd, we also looked at specifying appropriate size standards for new signs. So first, for linking locations of new signs to general plan land use designations, we created 2 categories. One grouping where impacts to residences would be minimal, and one where they should be prohibited. So the ones where impacts will be minimal to residents consist of general, highway-oriented commercial, community commercial, regional center, industrial, and public facilities. Those are the more appropriate, and we also have included photographs in your staff report that identify specific areas of the city which coincide with those designations. We also grouped together land use designations that were identified to be appropriate for the prohibition of off-site signs. Those include residential, where no manufacturing or commercial is located, neighborhood limited commercial, HPOZs, specific plans that specifically prohibit off-site signs, and public parks and civic buildings. Secondly, the department looked at which sensitive uses should be buffered from off-site signs, such as residential zones, ecological preserves, and scenic corridors. We did prepare 2 maps that I believe are passed out. They're just an illustrative map showing where signs might be allowed if we impose such conditions and prohibitions. One map provides areas that show where signs could be located, and that includes a 500-foot buffer from the River Improvement Overlay Zone and single-family zones. The other map shows a buffer of the Rio and all residential zones. So those are 2 sort of similar but drastically different illustrations of where signs might be permitted. And last, the zoning code today already has standards for off-site signs, which limit them to 800 square feet, 42 feet in height, and at least 8 feet above the ground. There's also a 200-foot distancing buffer between residential zones and spacing requirements from each other. So in addition to these types of land use controls, the department recognizes that other standards could be imposed to further reduce negative impacts to residences. One are takedowns, where requiring a certain amount of sign removal for each new static sign would be required, with higher rates of takedown for digital signs. 2, we looked into relocations, where we would consider a maximum number of sign relocations, which would require a sign to go down in one place for another one to go up somewhere else. Citywide caps that could be related to area planning commission areas, community plan areas, or city council districts. We looked into community benefits, such as streetscape improvements and public safety messaging. And lastly, we looked at additional components for digital displays, such as illumination and brightness standards, hours of operation, restriction on the animation and the refresh rates, more restrictive spacing than the code already requires, and more restrictive message frequency than what is allowed in sign districts. The department was also directed to comment on allowing off-site signs on public property, which could be subject to the same standards as off-site digital signs on private property. The report summarizes how West Hollywood, Sacramento, and Chicago do permit digital signs on public property. The report we gave you for this hearing today does not include which processes would permit off-site signs outside of sign districts. It does not include how we would allow digital displays on facades and rooftops of historic buildings within existing sign districts. It does not talk about maintaining the pre-1986 murals, and it also does not include allowing on-site digital signs outside of sign districts. And that concludes the overview of the report before you. So I'm here to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. We'll call up the CAO to talk about the revenue portion of this, but if there are any questions right now for the planning staff, or you want to hold off? We'll hold off and call up the CAO, talk about the revenue sharing portion of this.
Good afternoon, Jason Clean, Office of the City Administrative Officer. Basically, we worked with the Office of Finance and Building and Safety to get to the gross receipt numbers that are presented in the report. Gross receipts for the past 3 fiscal years have ranged from $164.8 million up to $196.3 million, of which the city's share was between $580,000 and $700,000. There are over 5,000 signs within the city of LA. There's exactly 5,629 signs. 5,104 of those are permitted signs. 525 are currently unpermitted signs. It's not a good factor to give you a per average sign because the sign value, the cost of advertising a sign in Silmar or in South Los Angeles is not the same as the cost for advertising a sign in West Hollywood or West LA. So they're not really good comparisons, and unfortunately, the Office of Finance's information, because it's taxpayer information, it's confidential, and the information as it relates to per sign averages and the revenue generations is proprietary within the sign industry, so we were unable to get the information on a detailed sign-by-sign basis. Effectively, what we're looking at is the city's existing model does not provide for any type of revenue sharing or community benefits, so that would be something that has to be added. You can do it through relocation agreements. You could do it through takedown and conversion from static to digital signs. You can look at increasing the gross receipts tax. You can do a number of things. Each of those has faced some kind of legal challenge somewhere else in the country. So we would advise that as we review those types of options, we work very closely with the city attorney's office. And if you have any questions, we're here to answer them.
Yeah, let me start off by saying that you reported that we currently are collecting at a gross receipt tax rate of $3.56 per $1,000 for existing billboards. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So now if we're collecting $3.56 per $1,000, would that put our current share of revenue or tax rate at roughly 0.4%?
Correct, sir.
And how much are other neighboring cities charging? Glendale, for example, they collect somewhere between 12 and 15%. Is that accurate?
They have a revenue sharing agreement through a development agreement with the Americana, so they only do revenue sharing for signage at the Americana site.
Okay.
So it's a special development agreement.
And in Chicago, they collected about $13 million in 2013 for digital signs on 34 sites. Was that on public or private, or what's their model?
Public property. So of the 1,300 signs they had, they collected less than $1 million in actual revenues associated with the gross receipts tax and any enforcement mechanisms there. They generated over $15 million associated with the 34 public sites where they did revenue sharing on those sites.
Yeah. And what's the history in the city? Why haven't we put a revenue sharing model that's near equivalent to some of the other cities? Why haven't we done anything like that?
I think we've always had legal concerns as to litigation in other areas. The city of Pittsburgh tried to increase their gross receipts tax on advertisements up to 7%, and that was challenged in the courts, and we're still pending a decision on that matter. You're looking at relocation agreements, whether they're challenged from other members of the sign industry or they're challenged by neighborhood groups. There's always been issues associated with doing things with signs in the city of Los Angeles. We had the issue with the digital billboard conversions that were part of a settlement agreement, and later a court ordered those, digital billboards to effectively go dark. So,
okay. And any type of revenue tax that we provide, that would have to be through referendum, correct? Through a ballot initiative?
it depends on the type of tax, but most likely it would have to go through a ballot initiative.
And which ones wouldn't?
I will defer to the city attorney's office, but anything where there's a special tax would be a ballot initiative.
It all depends what a special tax is defined as, right? City attorney's quick on their feet. You know the answer to that. What do you need research on that, or
in general, if you want to raise the gross receipts tax on a billboard, it would have to go to the voters?
Most everything.
Yes, because it's a tax.
Okay, but what wouldn't have to go?
It would. I believe the city of Long Beach recently initiated a mitigation impact fee, so that would be something that would require a nexus study, and we would actually look at what those impacts were.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. Okay, any questions or comments, or should we go to public comment? We'll go to public comment at this time. Thank you. Thanks. Mr. Cedillo.
What's the voting thresholds on these taxes?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I can find out for you.
And then distinctions on the voting thresholds versus, or is there a requirement to go to the people if it's a mitigation fee versus a tax?
Well, my understanding is that if it's a fee, then you don't necessarily have to bring it to the voters, because you're just reimbursing for costs that the city has incurred. But like the CAO's office mentioned, you'd have to have some type of study showing what the fee is intended to mitigate.
Right, so it could be something related to just expectations of the public to have a certain type of ambiance and then the disruption of that.
Well, I'm not familiar with your studies, but I think they generally have to be a little bit more concrete.
Right. They look at a variety of issues. Sometimes they look at the types of advertisements. So you might say that an advertisement for a soft drink that is in and around a school may lead to childhood obesity, and you're looking at ways to mitigate that by having educational programs at the school. So you have to actually look at the built environment, what's actually being advertised, and what those impacts are. It's a very long, cumbersome process in terms of actually coming up with something that's legally defensible.
And on that question, our current 0.4%, did we go through referendum for that? Through a ballot initiative, or was that adopted through ordinance?
It's actually, the way the current system works is it's lumped in with another group, and it just happens to be that group is actually taxed at that rate. I don't believe that we did a separate
If we amend that, would we have to go, the rate itself, would that have to go through ballot initiative as well?
There's
a
strong likelihood that I would.
Yeah, okay. Yes, Mr. Fuentes.
This is probably for both the city attorney and for the CAO's office. So there's a lot of talk about sort of the challenges with fees associated with mitigations, that they have to be concrete, that you have to really identify what it is that you're mitigating. That presumes that you are mitigating a message, I think, in the analysis that I've read. Where is there a distinction between trying to mitigate what the messaging is versus the impact of having these structures up? Because to me, that is really the impact that I think, first and foremost, is easily spoken to and identifiable. If you have, for example, on Van Nuys Boulevard, a big structure and it's casting a shadow and it's impacted by how the new mobility plan was processed, et cetera, you have, I think, very objective things that you're trying to mitigate, separate and aside from the messaging, because I don't know that anybody can forecast exactly what that messaging is going to be. So where do you draw the distinction between the mitigations? Because it seems that every time I read something, it is intended to mitigate a potential message. It could be, Smokey the Bear every single time preventing forest fires, and who would say that there's something to mitigate there? Where is the distinction drawn?
Well, I haven't seen a study like that in our city, but I would think in general you'd have to look at the negative impacts that arise from the signage. So if there were going to be that type of study prepared, we would work with the CAO's office to look at where the legal limits are. And there's case law that discusses it in other contexts, and we'd have to apply it here. But other than that, it's hard to talk about it in the abstract.
Well, and I think that's sort of where my frustration is, because the analysis, at least some of the stuff that's been offered by your office, speaks to the potential and the messaging, and I think that's important. But I'm concerned about sort of the hardscape mitigation. So how is it that we mitigate for the frequency of structures and message opportunities versus messaging? To me, there's a distinction there, but I don't see a place where we sort of distinguish between the two.
So typically the mitigation fees are forward-thinking, where you look at the past and you look at the impacts for the built environment, and then you basically figure out what those impacts are, and then you apply those mitigation measures on any new billboards or new sites that would actually be authorized. So it really wouldn't actually allow you to go backwards and actually apply those mitigation measures on the existing built environment. So it's really just looking at what impacts there have been on the existing environments, whether or not there's potentially, maybe it's casting shadows, so homeowners in and around that area wouldn't be allowed to have solar. There's a lot of abstract things that they look at. So it's, you know, with the distancing requirements and everything else, we as a city are, you know, you're making policy decisions that mitigate a lot of those impacts.
I think that there's a distinction that needs to be drawn. I mean, I look at the maps that were offered by the planning department, and I look at Van Nuys Boulevard, for example. It's a location where we are concentrating an effort to highlight community art. And as cumulative and large and sort of all over the place that art is, it competes very much so with the number of advertisements that we have. So I'm agnostic in some forms of the conversation as to the messaging, because cumulatively it's all advertisement, but it's a real competition to the art that we're trying to highlight in the community. So in my mind, there's a mitigation there to be able to allow the art to speak versus sort of paid advertising. And I'm indifferent as to what the messaging is, but the cumulative effect of the towers is what I would want to mitigate, and the signage, not sort of what's referenced, I think, oftentimes, which is the messaging. So to me, that's where I have a tough time when I hear the questions about the concerns that folks have on mitigation fees. To me, I think it's a simple calculation. I just wonder if you have evidence in case law that makes a distinction between the two, because I think if you did, we'd have a sort of a easier way to start beginning to parse out how it is that we go about collecting revenue. But I think it's a broader conversation. I appreciate your attempts to answer the questions.
We'll come back with more specific information as to how other municipalities have addressed it. Other municipalities have come up with programs that actually prioritize community art and displaying that artwork on those billboards. So let us come back with information as to how those committees or those municipalities have actually dealt with those issues.
Got it.
Yes, and I just wanted to add that if you do look at the Mitigation Fee Act, it looks as you were alluding to earlier, it looks at concrete impacts on the environment. And I would add, you should not look at the content of the message because you get into First Amendment issues. So I think that if planning staff or other staff was given that assignment, then they would be able to do it as they were preparing a report like that. We've only talked about it conceptually up to this point, and I don't believe that anybody's actually gone through the process yet.
Sure. No, it's just my, I hope, effort to sort of begin to help facilitate the conversation on identifying narrow, objective, and definite approaches. Because to me, it seems that we jump straight to the messaging piece of it, and I think that's sort of hampering our conversation.
That's right.
Thank you. So if we could, a couple of more questions for the planning staff on The report suggests citywide caps for new off-site signs based on community plans, APC areas, or council districts. Now, would these caps be for signs outside of sign districts, or or all signs altogether? How do you envision the caps working?
I mean, there are no rules right now, but it could be for either. But I think what we were envisioning here were just for the signs outside of the sign districts.
Outside of the sign districts, okay. And what numbers are we looking at? Have you run numbers yet, or we still have some work to do on there?
We don't have any numbers
right now. If we do something like that, okay. Now,
I mean, we would look at each geography separately. So if you wanted us to look at the APC areas, we could do that, or CPC, or the council districts, or the community plan areas. It would all depend.
Now let's assume that we implement some of these land use controls that you've laid out, and we're looking at relocation. How do we ensure that the takedowns and/or the community benefits would directly impact the same area or council district? Is there some mechanism that you've thought about? This is something that both Mr. Harris-Dawson and Mr. Fuentes brought up at the last meeting.
Yeah, sure. There are. I mean, right now, one of the ordinance versions does say that the takedowns have to be done within a reasonable distance, but we could adjust that accordingly. We could allow it to be a takedown anywhere within either a certain radius or within the area planning commission district or council district. It could be anything we feel is the most appropriate.
Okay. All right.
If I could just add to what Tom was saying, is when you look at the takedown ratios, you really have to weigh the policy benefits of takedowns on a 2-to-1, a 3-to-1. The B+ model actually talked about 10-to-1, and your ability to actually implement some of the community benefits that you're tossing around. So from the takedown perspective, the higher the takedown ratio, it's going to be more cumbersome for the billboard industry to actually hit the revenue targets. So like on a 10-to-1 ratio, you'd have to take down 10 feet of static signage for every 1 foot of digital signage that you would take up. And when you have the zoning and distancing requirements associated with those impacts, you'd actually have to generate the same amount of revenue with that new digital sign. And when we were looking at what other municipalities did nationwide, we didn't see any takedown ratios that high. So that leads our office to kind of believe that it's unlikely that takedown ratios that are that high would actually allow you to implement the program. You would probably just have the same built environment that you currently have, which wouldn't, get to the policy discussion about actually getting signs taken down and addressing some of the blight, nor would it give you any of the community benefits that are being discussed. So you're going to have to weigh the takedown ratio with the community benefits and or revenue sharing models that you want to discuss on a go-forward basis. That would be our recommendation.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Fuentes.
I'm sorry. I'll be quiet after this and have public comment. But so the ratios is one thing, but in the sort of report, it's still pretty quiet on how you address districts like mine. So when the map is very helpful and illustrative, I think, of sort of the challenge that we've got. I don't have, in fact, I actually think that there might be a correction that needs to be made to the map, because when you look at the regional centers for CD7, there's only one place, and it's in the Silmar community. That community plan was recently updated, so where you show commercial there is where I've got residential planned and actually being built. So I think it just underscores the point that I don't have a way to avail myself of any takedown sort of mechanism under the current sort of thinking. Any thoughts on how it is that we could tickle a process for districts like mine and the other 40% of the city?
To your point, and something we'll have to work very closely with the city attorney on, is actually looking at not just allowing for takedowns to count within a specific geographic range of the sign where it's going up, but allow for it to look at regional or citywide takedown. So if you set a takedown policy in the immediate area of 2-to-1, but had an overall required takedown ratio of 3-to-1 or 4-to-1, and giving the billboard industry the opportunity to take down signs in other areas of the city where the signs are less profitable or you have more impact to the community to satisfy that requirement, that would be one way to allow for takedown ratios in your council district and other council districts where the digital signs may not be as profitable and they might not actually want to take down signs because it wouldn't actually generate the business that they currently generate.
How do you address the issue of discretion? Because the city attorney seems to, at least in a letter dated May 16th to us that's privileged, it seems to indicate in different places that discretionary actions by the city of Los Angeles is sort of the perilous ground for us. So the flip side of that is giving the discretion to the billboard companies, which, to your point about sort of profitable signs and non-profitable signs, you know, I don't know how I have any sort of say in trying to help mitigate some of the impacts that we're currently experiencing. So in that sort of thinking, who decides and how?
I would recommend that we had a concrete process that is black and white, and it sets forth the rules. That says that you're required to have a takedown ratio immediately adjacent to the digital sign of this. However, the city has a policy of a takedown ratio of this, and you can satisfy it the following ways. Whether it's a community benefit, some kind of revenue sharing model, relocation agreement, or it's takedown in other areas of the city to satisfy the agreement.
Yeah, I'm concerned about that just because I think I get short shrift in that equation. I don't know that I'm, and I like to think that we're appealing to digital boards, but I don't know that I'm in sort of the loading order of interest. So that being said, I don't know how I have any way to help manage the takedown process. It keeps sort of thinking and pushing me to want to figure out a more, whether it's APC sort of specific sort of plans or council plans. I just think that we've got to figure out how to get an agreement process going that allows for some process so we can start addressing it. I just think that if we leave it, and I'm nervous about the conversation that it's going, because I think we do the analysis, the conversation on B+, and I think it's getting away from about 40% of the city of Los Angeles' impact. So, okay, Mr. Chair, I'll be quiet and listen to some folks.
Mr. Harris-Dawson?
Don't look so excited. I just wanted to add to Mr. Fuentes' comments. I feel like this is the third discussion where we've raised the same issue that was just pointed out about the scope and scale, and because it's been raised so many times, I just want to sharpen it a little bit for the record. So we have things in lots of the city, in my district included, where billboard companies in the past, with the cooperation of the city, did stuff that I don't think anybody would want in their neighborhood, least of all the executives at the billboard companies, like billboards on the front lawn, on a 10 by 10 front lawn of a duplex on a main street. So this seems like an opportunity to begin to address that, and we keep coming back with proposals that don't talk to that at all. And so I'm wondering, is there something specific we need to do to make that conversation happen in a substantive way, or what would you recommend in that regard?
Well, I think if we maybe choose one of these types of buffers or takedown areas, we could start maybe analyzing what that could be. These are going to probably have to be done on a case-by-case basis, so we would have to assume that maybe a billboard, let's pick a corner, and if a billboard goes up there, what could a takedown ratio look like of a variety of different options? What would the takedown ratio look like if it was a static billboard going up and we had a takedown ratio of 2-to-1 within the community plan area, within the area planning commission area, within the council district, or within a mile or 2 miles? We could do that kind of analysis, but it's very difficult for us to make sort of very specific recommendations on general assumptions. So we are trying to sort of narrow the focus of this conversation to what we would like to see. And if we want to come back maybe with some examples of maybe 3 different types of options, that would make it easier for the committee to get their hands around what a takedown would look like. But it's been a challenge for us also, because we don't know, but we could look at any type of geography, and as long as the city attorney thinks that that's relative to a new sign going up, we could look at a variety of different options for takedown. Does that answer somewhat of your question?
Yeah, thank you. And Mr. Harris-Dawson, I think you're correct. We're narrowing the conversation, I think, from where we first started. When I first got involved in this issue, it was more about a defensive position as to how do we protect ourselves from digital billboards. And what we're doing now is going through a process that kind of starts narrowing down the issues for us, such as that we make sure that whatever framework we get and the impacts to our communities, all communities, that we explore and how do we leverage this market demand to make improvements in every neighborhood. And as we get more to whatever land use control we choose to go down, whatever path, as we narrow those down to our next meeting, and also analyze that in the context of revenue sharing, those types of, if you want to call them equity issues, will arise, and we want to control for those. And so we're narrowing it down. I think at the next meeting will give us an opportunity to, or even now, we could ask them to come back for the next meeting for some of those analysis to see what that may look like.
I mean, the maps we did pass out do show, it's pretty good analysis of where signs could potentially go up once we've taken out all of those restrictions. So there's a very, it's pretty limited where they could go. So those are some just ideas that the planning department has thought about with the buffers and the ecological preserves thrown into the mix. But once we get a sense of where these can go, maybe we can get a better sense of where the takedowns could happen also. So I think we are getting there.
Okay, with that, we'll go to public comment, and then we'll come back for any further questions from the committee, and we'll go from there. Elizabeth Hawley, Stuart Waldman, and Patrick Frank. And I want to remind everyone you have 1 minute on public comment. I'll call 3 people at a time. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Hawley, Legislative Affairs Manager at the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, or VICA, representing over 400 local businesses. This is the time to create opportunities for digital billboards, which will help small businesses in our communities to thrive. The San Fernando Valley should be allowed to benefit from takedowns and revenues generated by appropriate mechanisms in the same way that the West Side and downtown areas do. In addition, VICA is concerned by the treatment of on-site digital signage, which advertise goods and services available on the premises. Some businesses need to utilize on-site digital technology to promote their businesses. We ask that you remove the restriction on on-site digital signs that aren't in sign districts and create a review process with appropriate restrictions and guidelines to allow businesses to apply to use these signs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stuart Waldman, also from VICA, but I want to talk about offsite advertising. The time to create opportunities for digital advertising is now. Allowing digital offsite advertising to succeed will create opportunities for small businesses to thrive. We urge you to develop mechanisms, whether that be relocation and/or development agreements, that allow for the city to receive much-needed revenue. We must create equitable opportunities for all neighborhoods and all residents in Los Angeles. I urge you to allow local residents and communities to determine their own destiny. Don't allow a few to speak for the masses. This ordinance should allow Valley Council districts to benefit from takedowns and revenues like the West Side and downtown communities do. This current plan would shut out the Valley again. We request the committee to take immediate action to implement a digital ordinance on both private and public property for off-site signs in the city of LA. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Frank, Leslie Gersikoff, and Dennis Hathaway.
My name is Patrick Frank, and I live, work, and vote in LA. I want to discuss this question of digital billboards on city property. I have a few points to make. Number one, most people don't like to look at digital billboards. Number two, digital billboards lower property values wherever they're put in. Number three, a lot of cities and entire states have banned billboards completely, and they're getting along just fine. Number four, digital billboards present a constant distraction to drivers wherever they're placed. And number five, doing it on city property will put LA in the position of regulating content, and the difficulties of the takedown ratios have already been discussed here. Now, why are we even considering this? Well, it's said in the committee report that we will have public benefits and we will have takedowns of signs. Well, I'm here to tell you both of those goals can be achieved in other ways. One of them is taxation. I've heard that works pretty well. And the other is regulation. Regulation happens when the city council members and the city employees do their jobs. So the best way that you can regulate this is to put in version B+ and send it to the council. Thank you.
Leslie Gersikoff and Dennis Hathaway, Cindy Starrett.
Good afternoon. I'm Leslie Gersikoff. I'm the Executive Director of the Jewish Labor Committee Western Region, and I'm here today standing with CLU, the Coalition for, thank you, for Economic Justice. We know that since we've been here before, you've heard this many times over the years. You've heard the same arguments for, the same arguments against. And today, I think the quality of the questioning leads us to believe that we can place our trust in this commission to come up with fair standards to both the citizens who are worried about the signs and those of us who support you pushing this ordinance through so that we can finally move forward and have better revenue for the city, more jobs because of this, very possibly enhance the public emergency alert system, and just move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Hathaway, Cindy Starrett, Benjamin Hanlon, and Clint Simmons.
Good afternoon. I'm Dennis Hathaway, president of the Coalition to Ban Billboard Blight. I'd like to call your attention to a letter that was recently posted in the council file from the executive director of First 5 LA, which is a nonprofit working on issues of childhood health, including obesity. And that letter references studies that establish a link between outdoor advertising and rates of obesity, particularly in low-income and minority areas. Also, in 2015, the single biggest billboard advertiser nationwide was McDonald's. Number 6 on that top 10 list was Coca-Cola. So if more digital billboards will mean more ads for sugary drinks, more ads for fast food, and they're going to be brighter, they're going to be more attention-getting, they're more likely to get the attention of children with their graphics, and more likely for the child riding in the car to say, "Daddy, Mommy, let's go to McDonald's, let's get a Pepsi." Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, council members. Cindy Starrett from Latham & Watkins on behalf of Clear Channel. We appreciate the direction that you gave last time toward a workable ordinance that encourages sign reduction for all communities and recognizes the city currently has 9,000 existing faces of billboards. Those are in all communities. None of the ordinances before you provide equity and access to benefits for everyone in Los Angeles, and everyone in Los Angeles deserves that access. Relocation agreements are a very viable tool. All the litigation on relocation agreements has been successful for the cities. We know of 2 cases, both upholding sign bans with relocation agreements as an exception. And we also think that more work is needed with staff. Tier 2 sign districts don't allow off-site signs, so they are in the report. They don't help at all. And the Tier 1 sign districts don't benefit all the communities in the city. The 500-foot radius is not necessary. We do need to protect single-family residents, but we can do that by requiring that the signs are not primarily visible from those zones. We look forward to working with you, and we think the committee is setting a very good direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Benjamin Hanlon, is Clint Simmons still here? No? Clint Simmons? Laura Salagi, Wade Trimmer, and Nancy Hoffman Van Yek. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, Vice Chair, and Council members. Benjamin Hanlon of Latham & Watkins on behalf of Clear Channel Outdoor. As the CAO mentioned, relocation agreements are a valuable tool that can be used to reduce the number of existing signs and provide other real benefits to the city. The cities of Oakland, Berkeley, Sacramento, Santa Clara, South San Francisco, Carson, Daly City, Fontana, Gardena, I could go on, have all used these freely negotiated agreements in order to achieve these goals. Relocation agreements can provide monetary benefits to the city of Los Angeles to reduce blight, to fight homelessness, and to improve traffic. One example, the City of Newark entered into a relocation agreement where the City of Newark gave rights to 3 digital signs. In exchange, 24 signs came down, and the City of Newark received $160,000 a year for a 25-year term. Last time we were here, my client Clear Channel submitted a letter dated April 18th. That has an attachment. Attachment 1 lists about 30 relocation agreements that cities across California have entered into. We urge the city to take advantage of that opportunity as well. Thank you.
Laura Szilagyi. I'm really puzzled as to why we are discussing this at all. Having off-site signs is unnecessary. Having good signage for businesses that have, plain old signs is fine. Then people can see what's going on in their neighborhood. They could go to the stores. Digital billboards don't bring in that much money. When you were talking about the entirety of the income that's brought to Los Angeles, it's a pittance. And even if you triple that or quadruple that compared to the budget of the city, it's absolutely nothing. So I think we want to really consider one important thing. Are we a city of consumers, or are we a city of citizens? Thanks.
Wade Trimmer, San Fernando Valley Rescue Mission. Thanks for this opportunity to be before you today. There are thousands of signs throughout the city that many people no longer see. They say things like homeless vet, will work for food, or hungry. The people who hold these signs are my number one concern. My life's work is about getting people to the point where these signs are no longer needed and can be put away because our most vulnerable citizens are getting what they need. The proposal before you provides a revenue stream that will help us take care of these great people with great needs. Let's pay attention to the signs they're holding, and let's accept help from interested parties like the outdoor advertising industry. God knows we need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Hoffman-Vaniek, Scott Zvonkin, Stacy Miller, and Angela Gibson.
Hi, I'm Nancy Hoffman-Vaniek from the Greater San Fernando Valley Chamber of Commerce. And our business community needs an affordable means of advertising. The proposal that was presented by the staff at the last hearing leaves out a lot of council districts, and all of the San Fernando would be left out if this proposal was adopted. Under the current sign district, no takedowns nor reduction in the signage would be realized in the valley, along with the fact that no revenue would be realized in the San Fernando Valley. The current proposals will not generate revenue needed for these critical issues of version B and B+. There is a need for fairness and equity across the entire city. We can't allow just one area of our city to benefit from a very small number of residents that do not want digital signage in their community. We need action now, and we ask that you pass a comprehensive sign ordinance that will allow for the billboard reduction funding to the city and digital signs outside of the sign district.
Okay, welcome. Welcome, our president from the Community College Board of Trustees.
Chairman, council members, thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. I want to take you through my career a little bit. It began in West Hollywood, a city that has managed to ensure that there's a public benefit by ensuring that there are development agreements when billboards go up. They've managed to partner with the industry to make sure that the community benefits. Here's your one opportunity to change the rules of the game and ensure that every neighborhood from the San Fernando Valley to the harbor benefit. Go on a little further in my life. I proposed to my wife with a billboard on the corner of Sunset and Doheny. My wife and my 2 children are from the fact that I rented a billboard for a day 17 years ago. There's a huge benefit. Go forward. I worked for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. The LA County Sheriff's Department uses billboards to recruit the new members of the Sheriff's Department. Fast forward to the LA Community College District. We partner in order to recruit students. Thank you so much for your time. I urge you to approve on and off-site billboards and digital signs in order to help bring information, and safety to our communities.
Thank you, Mr. Zvankin. I was going to say you have more time. We usually provide a courtesy to other elected officials if you wanted to.
Well, I
proceed.
appreciate that. I just want to conclude with whether it's the FBI, thank you, whether it's partnerships with the FBI, when there's an Amber Alert, this industry has stepped up numerous times. When I was on the San Gabriel Unified School Board, I worked with the Billboard industry to promote student enrollment and our foundations in the San Gabriel Valley. This is an industry that's willing to work with you council district by council district to ensure that there's a benefit from South Los Angeles to the top of the San Fernando Valley. I encourage you to come up with a plan that gives flexibility so that you can provide your communities with the benefits that you believe are necessary, whether they take them down in your neighborhoods in the San Fernando Valley or whether they put them up on major thoroughfares across Los Angeles. It will benefit the people of LA. Thank you so much, council members.
Thank you very much. Stacy Miller, Angela Gibson.
Good afternoon, Chairman and council members. My name is Stacy Miller, represent the LA Outdoor Advertising Association, comprised of Clear Channel, Outfront Media, and Lamar Advertising. We, along with our hundreds of supporters, really believe the time is now to draft, develop, and pass a comprehensive digital billboard reduction and modernization plan. We believe that we support a plan that will allow for a reduction of over 4,000 billboards in the city, will provide significant revenue, will allow each council district and their constituents to determine what they want and if they want digital billboards. It will provide community benefits for all areas and especially underserved areas, will protect single-family neighborhoods, and will allow for life-saving messaging, public safety messaging. We see this as a win-win for all involved. Over 1,000 municipalities in 43 states currently allow for digital advertising. We believe the time is now to allow for a program for on-site and off-site on public and private property. Thank you.
Thank you. Angela Gibson, Arnold Ahrens, Alicia Witzling, and Ed McKeegan.
Good afternoon. My name is Angela Gibson. I'm the president of the Greater Los Angeles African American Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of our members, we'd like for you to keep small businesses in mind because this is a very important alternative to the advertising in our communities. Also, we'd like to request our support of the Billboard Reduction and Modernization Program that can benefit all communities. At the last hearing, the current proposal in front of you severely limited digital signage programs to some areas, but not all. Please consider all communities when making a decision as to who can or cannot benefit from billboard takedowns and much-needed revenues to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Ed McKeegan, and I'm a managing member of MEI Capital Partners, and I'm here in support of a prudent plan for digital signs both on public and private property in a, as I said, prudent manner. I think there's many benefits for the city, including an ability to manage this process, ensuring that the signs aren't put up in neighborhoods and are not put up in a way that take away from other public benefits. I think it's an excellent opportunity on the part of this chamber to work with the private sector in clearing the blight of signs that we have and perhaps giving more room for art or getting signs off front lawns in the various communities. So I'd like to say I'm in support of a prudent sign plan that could be adopted by this council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Arnold Ahrens. I'm a business owner in the downtown area. I actually had a question is why haven't the billboard companies been given sufficient time to clarify their position more than just a minute? Their perspective and information should prove useful to the committee, as shown by comments made by one senior VP at the last meeting talking about the takedown of signage. They're not villains. They're willing participants in the city's future and this process. This committee would be should be willing to hear them out in a more lengthy manner and question them so that we can get more information, which would be vital to this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alicia Witzling, David Phelps, Chris Hannon, and Piedmont Brown.
Hi, Alicia Witzling with the LA Area Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the LA Chamber, our over 1,600 members and our 650,000 employees that we represent, we're here again to support a comprehensive sign ordinance that includes off-site and on-site digital signs outside of sign districts. As a city and business community that embraces new technologies and welcomes innovation, we support the use of digital billboards and the creation of regulations that adequately address their use. In fact, we need this affordable means of advertising. The city also has the opportunity to generate a new source of revenue to fund critical public services, but the current proposal won't generate the revenue. The current proposal for sign districts leaves out most council districts, whereby most districts won't receive the benefits of takedowns or potential funding. We are calling for a fair and reasonable comprehensive policy citywide that includes relocation agreements, community benefits, requirements of at least a 1-to-1 takedown ratio for static in exchange for digital, protection of single-family residences, and furthermore, many businesses need to utilize on-site digital technology to promote their business. Please remove the restrictions on on-site digital outside of sign districts and create a process with time and place manner restrictions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, David Phelps with the Association of Independent Commercial Producers. We're a trade association that represents over 350 small and medium-sized production companies that specialize in the production of content for advertising. As many of you know, the city is experiencing a huge increase in film production citywide and statewide due to the assistance of programs such as the California Tax Incentive. But unfortunately, commercials and advertising in general are not a part of that incentive. So we have to do everything we can to help attract additional revenue for our member companies to provide for more work in the Los Angeles area. And ordinances like this that provides for digital signage, both on and off-site, allows for increased project opportunities for our members to bring in economic investment and production expenditures to the city of Los Angeles. So just providing an economic development perspective on this issue, this is something that a lot of our small and medium-sized companies can benefit in, and they increasingly are producing content for billboards, not just for broadcast television. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. Chris Hannon, Los Angeles Orange County's Building Construction Trades Council. The 140,000 men and women of the Los Angeles Orange County Building Construction Trades Council support a comprehensive sign ordinance that goes beyond the current sign districts, goes beyond only placing billboards, including digital billboards on city property. We recently came to an agreement with the city of Los Angeles, together with the Coalition of LA City Unions, the Fix LA Coalition, to restore city services, to another letter of agreement on revenue generation. This fits within the spirit of that. It also serves as public safety, and contrary to the earlier developers that were, or developer that was in this room to have their project approved, Clear Channel and Lamar both have project labor agreements with the building trades that'll create great jobs and opportunities for the community. Thank you.
Piedmont Brown, Jeremy Diaz, Rabbi Jonathan Klein, and Keith Stevens.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. Thank you for this opportunity to address you this afternoon. My name is Piedmont Brown. I'm president of the Ironworkers, 30,000 ironworkers in the city of Los Angeles. I come before you today to voice our support for comprehensive sign ordinance that expands beyond existing limited sign districts. We have a project labor agreement with two of the major sign companies, Clear Channel and Outdoor, and Lamar. These agreements give our hardworking members the work of both erecting the digital signs as well as taking down the existing signs. By enacting an ordinance that either restricts existing sign districts or restricts to public property restricts our work. But more likely important to you, it also restricts the revenue of this city, except for a comprehensive sign ordinance is enacted. Restricting to the city property of existing signs, district officers would deny many areas of our city an important public safety tool that will save lives if we are finally allowed to take advantage of it. I hope with respect for you guys to move forward with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jeremy Diaz. Rabbi Jonathan Klein, Keith Stevens.
Good afternoon. Rabbi Jonathan Klein with Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. You've heard us several times here. I want to just piggyback on what was said by our colleague Wade Trimmer, who's expressed a concern about the homeless in this community and the fact that you have a revenue stream at your fingertips. The reality is that the city has been trying to figure out how to address homelessness and has been trying to figure it out in a way that would be the least disruptive to what has already been established. Do we create a millionaire's tax, which is being considered by the county right now? Well, there are problems with that. Do we steal from Peter to pay Paul, to use a religious metaphor, not my religion? Nevertheless, it's a point that we need to figure out. How are we going to fund this? Well, you have this incredible opportunity to raise money. Chicago, the report noted, has raised $15 million per year with very little, just with the public component. And if you were to do this on a much grander scale, we would finally be able to seriously address the real issue, which is the homeless that are struggling and depending on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Stevens, Ashley Quintanilla, Yadira Cruz, and I can't quite make out this writing. It's ROBQ and whatever the remainder of that is. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council. You have talked about doing a citywide cap today, and I would like to encourage the Council to, if you're going to do a cap, please take into account what advertisers are demanding in this market, not what people that don't like the way something looks say is an adequate number. I live in Hollywood. There are buses driving around that are completely wrapped in advertising, and it's being done by a company that used to have signs beside the freeway, or beside Hollywood and Highland. And now they're actually driving buses around that have no one in them, and I'm ending up sitting behind them. And as far as the replacement, cap and replace, please understand, for every billboard that you get replaced, there's a property owner across town that is a legal property owner counting on the revenue that's generated from that tenant that isn't being considered. And if you're going to do that, let's notify the commercial property owners that this is what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello.
You can move the microphone down. Yeah, thank you.
My name is Ashley Quintanilla. I'm part of the LA Brown Berets, and I go to Lincoln High School. I'm here and stand with Clue's plan in support for the digital billboards. To my understanding, the agreement ensures good jobs around the signs. I believe the money that comes through these signs will benefit city funds, especially those who live in lower-income neighborhoods like myself. These signs will create funding for youth development, which can help students like myself succeed. These signs and jobs offered will improve the city and issues faced like homelessness and lives of those who need it the most. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Edira Cruz. I am part of the Brown Berets, and I attend Lincoln High School. I support Glue Justice Demands. The digital billboard signs will be a positive aspect in my community. I understand that this untapped revenue will create jobs or benefits, which will bring funds into the city of LA. These funds can help my community, for example, in youth development. I know that in many schools, majority of students don't have youth centers, and I personally have been lucky enough to be able to get to college because of a youth center in my neighborhood. But I know that a lot of youth don't have these resources. Investing money in the digital billboard signs is investing money and opportunities into the future of LA.
Thank you. And can you state your name for the record, please?
Sure. Apologize for my writing. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Robert Cristo. I'm organizing director of the LA Brown Berets, and I'm a faith-rooted organizer with Clue Justice. So first, I would like to say that LA Brown Berets stand behind Clue and the support for the digital billboards. We are very proud that these digital billboards will be able to ensure good union jobs for their workers. And we also are looking at the work that we do within ourselves as an organization. We recognize there are many deficits, there are many places that need good funding through the city, and this is an untapped revenue stream. The money that could be brought through the use of these digital billboards can be taken and put in places where it's long been denied. So please do this, and we stand, like I say, in support for the digital billboards. Thank you.
Thank you. Pastor Q. J.N. Marie, Jean Marie. Pastor, right here. Here. Gabriela Orozco, Pastor Bridie Roberts.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Pastor Q from the Church Without Walls. I'm here on behalf of CLU and hundreds of clergy and laity who are deeply concerned about our communities and care about economic justice. With that, I say limiting this work to sign districts or only to public lands will drastically cut back the city's potential revenue streams that can be used to provide services to address homelessness, fix our streets, and also provide good jobs in public sectors. Public sector jobs which are held disproportionately by people of color who face discrimination in public sectors. So in a city where we have 26,000 people homeless, we can't afford to leave money on the table. Let's do this.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gabriela Roscoe, and I work with CLU as well, Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. And thank you so much for your time and energy today. I am a resident of Los Angeles. I live in Council District 10. And as it's been stated here before, there is a real need in this city. I think we all know that there's always the question of where is money going to come from. We ask that all the time. And I am here because we do have an opportunity to invest in a revenue stream. And I am here to ask that you support this and move it forward unrestricted. But I also want to point out something that hasn't been said yet. There is an urgency. And I appreciate the process that has gone into this decision. But there are people that cannot be here today because they are working 2 and 3 jobs. They need really great jobs. This opportunity will provide jobs to lift people out of poverty, to help the homeless situation, to provide a stream of revenue. And those individuals shouldn't have to wait any longer. At CLU, we advocate on behalf of those who are marginalized and who are vulnerable. So please do what is right. Thank you.
Thank you. Pastor Bridie Roberts, Guillermo Torres, Christopher French, and Brian Levian.
Hi, my name is Bridie Roberts. I am the program director at CLU. I'm also a pastor who has served in Los Angeles and Los Angeles area for more than a decade. I've served in pulpits as diverse as a tiny street corner church in Pico Union to preaching from the largest pulpits in Hollywood. And what I've seen in this city is the tale of disparity, both in services and access to good jobs. I think that you have a real opportunity here to pursue a policy around these signs that allows us to expand a revenue stream for the city that not only addresses the possibility of raising money to meet these gaps in services and community goods, but also will increase the possibility of creating good jobs. The companies that are before you, the people who have these contracts, they've agreed to fair labor standards. They're looking to create jobs that are sustainable for our community, and those are things that we need. It's not something that's on paper. I've seen it every day in the work that I've done in this city, both in the pastoral ministry, but as an organizer. So I ask you now to stop delaying, to take action, and to embrace a real opportunity to create change.
Thank you.
Mr. Witzel, Mr. Harris-Dawson, council members, my name is Guillermo Torres, also a faith-rooted organizer for Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. I also share a committee in South Central of African-American faith leaders and Hispanic leaders. I work directly with UCARE program of unaccompanied Central American Refugee Empowerment Coalition and organize for immigrant rights, especially their economic rights. I came here today to urge you to vote to move the sign ordinance forward. I work with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, trying to stretch the resources of the city to take care of the needs of these innocent children with so little support in their lives. Without a city government that raises revenues, we will watch these children lose their chance at making it in this world. So please help by making sure that the sign ordinance moves forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Council members, my name is Christopher French. I live in Echo Park. I've been watching this discussion for some time, and like most Angelinos, I'm astounded, as I'm sure most of you are, the terrible growth of homelessness in our city. It makes the impasse on digital billboards particularly painful, as we know the city is missing a fundamental revenue stream. The city needs to not only restore services, but to expand them. There's too much suffering. This luxury of a wonky discussion over whether billboards in public or private space in sign districts or everywhere are essentially good or bad is long past. People are suffering. I don't love these signs. but I certainly recognize my own privilege to debate the particulars while people are dying in our streets. Please pass this sign ordinance as soon as you can. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Levian, Barbara Brody, Mello Desire, and Reverend John Cager.
Hello, council members. Thank you so much for letting me speak to you guys. Brian Levian here, property owner in Los Angeles. Own a few properties that have billboards on it that have not been able to receive market rent for those billboards due to the fact of the ban. So I hope in consideration when you guys do look into the ordinance to consider the property owners and make sure that what you come up with is fair to all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Brody, Westwood, south of Santa Monica Boulevard homeowners, West Side Neighborhood Council, Coalition to Ban Billboard Blight. I am not with Clue. I am not with Latham Watkins. I do not represent Clear Channel. And if you hold another hearing on this, I suggest you do it on a Saturday morning when all of the neighborhood council constituents, your constituents, can come and tell you that they are not having a market demand for digital signs in their streets, in their backyards. You may buffer them from R1 properties, but they will still be on our commercial corridors, and we will be looking at them. We will be crashing our cars into the other cars. There is a city zero fatality program that the mayor and DOT director announced that says we want to reduce fatalities on our streets. Yet you're talking about letting digital billboards wild in the streets, where proven scientific studies are now coming in on this new technology that show they distract drivers and they cause accidents. What is the city's liability when you assess the cost-benefit analysis for the liability the city bears for the accidents and the injuries that come from the digital billboards?
Thank you. Thank you. Mellow Desire.
Saturday.
Mellow Desire? Okay. And Reverend John Cager?
Hi, good evening. I wanted to discuss the reasoning for digital billboards. First off, when you have a major problem here with homelessness, I find it very disrespectful that you guys meet week after week on taxpayers' dollars on a solution to reduce homelessness, and yet you're discussing digital billboards, which is fine, but we have a major crack epidemic downtown in Skid Row, Firehouse 23, which we need to utilize it for our homeless youth. That should be first on foreground more than anything else. I have not gotten a response back from Myra. I'm still waiting for a letter of support from my city councilman. So when these things are addressed, then we can say, okay, yay or nay to digital signage, which we need to reduce homelessness first off. So I ask you, please, if we're going to continue to have meetings like this, to please address the organizations who have came to you time and time again for seeking the answers of reducing homelessness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Reverend John Cager, Ramon Zapata, Roger Mejia.
I'm Reverend John Cager. I'm here with Clue, and I represent the AME Church in Southern California. I have worked in the 8th District for almost 30 years, lived in the 4th District almost 25 years. And number one, I'm disappointed in all of you when I hear that Chicago is generating $15 million worth of revenue and LA is only doing $500,000. That's poor public policy. Get off the stick. Let me tell you how to do your job real quick. Let's expand the digital billboards. Let's tear down the old ones. Let's make sure that they do local hire, train the 8 trade gangsters and the 5 Deuce Hoovers to put up the billboards in their communities. Let's go to Pacoima, get the Harpies up there, train them to put the billboards up there. It's a win-win, win-win, win-win-win. Thank you.
Ramon Zapata, Roger Mejia, Danny Almeida.
Buenas tardes, soy Ramón Zapata, soy miembro de...
Habla español, señor.
Presidente de la ciudad de los
Si se espera, puede esperar un momento, aquí está alguien para que le traduzca. Un momento. Can you give 2 minutes, please?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Ramón Zapata.
Good afternoon, my name is Ramón
He
Zapata.
sido un residente de la ciudad de Los Ángeles, en la ciudad de Boyle.
I have been a resident of the city of Los Angeles in the community of Boyle Heights for 30 years.
Soy miembro de la Unión Binacional de de Braceros.
I am a member of the
Del
union.
Consejo
I'm a member of the
Vecinal
union.
de Boyle Hills.
Of the union of
Estoy
the.
aquí hoy para expresar mi apoyo a
I am
una
here to express my support
ordenanza
to an ordinance
integral que
integral
pertenece a nuestra ciudad
that works with our city
mejorar carteleros electrónicos
to enhance the digital
beneficios para la
digital
comunidad,
for
muy
our
necesario
community.
para los barrios como el mío.
It is necessary for neighborhoods like mine. Sorry.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Roger Mejia. I've been a resident of LA City for the last 30 years. Council District 10 and Council District 9, Koreatown, Westlake, and South Los Angeles. That I guess includes City 1 as well. Today, I'm here to voice my support for a comprehensive sign ordinance that will allow our city to manage our billboards and provide much-needed community benefits for neighborhoods like mine. Allowing digital billboards outside of sign districts will allow everyone in the city to benefit from this new ordinance. It would provide removals of some billboards that are sensitive in some areas. It would provide much-needed revenue to the city by allowing digital billboards in appropriate locations. Thousands of cities throughout our nation already have working signs ordinance policies like these in place, and our residents like me are actively benefiting from them. It is time for LA to join these cities.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you very much. Thank you. Daniel Almeida.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Daniel Almeida. I've been a resident for over 50 years in Boyle Heights. I'm here today to voice my support for a comprehensive sign ordinance that will allow our city to manage our billboards and provide much-needed community benefits for the neighborhood like mine. The fact is, sign districts don't get us where we need to be. Allowing digital billboards outside of the sign districts will allow everyone in the city to benefit from this new ordinance. It will provide removals of some billboards that are in sensitive areas and much-needed revenue to the city by allowing digital billboards in appropriate locations. You also have the opportunity to secure crucial community benefits that could be used and invest in our communities, parks, sideways, roads, and more. Thousands of cities throughout our nation already have working sign ordinances with policies like these in place, and residents like me are actively benefiting from them. It's time for LA to join these cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leonardo Villa, Baldomero Capiz, Valdemir Avila, and Guadalupe Magallanes.
Muy buenas tardes, señores concejales.
Good afternoon, council member.
Mi nombre es Baldomero Capiz
My name is Baldomero Capiz.
y he sido un residente de la ciudad de Los Ángeles
I have been a resident of the city of Los Angeles
en la comunidad de Boyle Heights
and the community of Boyle Heights
por más de 25 años.
for more than 25 years.
Soy miembro de la Unión Binacional de Ex Braceros,
I am a member of the Unión Binacional de Braceros,
miembro del Consejo Vecinal de Boyle Heights.
member of the Neighborhood Council of Boyle Heights.
Estoy aquí hoy para expresar mi apoyo
I am here to express my support
a una ordenanza integral
to one ordinance
que permitirá a nuestra ciudad
that would allow our city
para manejar carteleras electrónicas
to manage digital billboards
y proporcionar beneficios para la comunidad,
and provide benefits for the community.
muy necesarios para los barrios como el mío.
Very necessary for the neighborhoods like mine.
El hecho es que los distritos de carteleras estáticas
The fact is that the districts of signs,
ya
static,
no sirven
they're not working,
y están atrás de los tiempos.
and they're behind times.
La ordenanza debería permitir
the ordinance should allow
que las carteleras digitales
that the digital billboards
se utilicen fuera de los distritos
were utilized outside of the districts
que se proponen para permitir
that are proposed to allow
que todos en la ciudad
that everybody in the city
realmente beneficien de la ordenanza propuesta.
that benefit from the ordinance that is being proposed.
Uno de los beneficios que necesitamos en Boyle Heights
One of the benefits that we need in Boyle Heights
y en otras comunidades
and other communities
al oeste sería remover carteleras estáticas
to the east would be to remove or take down static billboards
por cada cartelera digital que se instale.
for every digital billboard that is installed.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
much.
Guadalupe Magallanes.
Good afternoon. My name is Guadalupe Magallanes. I'm the owner of Lady Remedios Products located in the Boyle Heights area. I've been a Los Angeles business owner for 3 years and an Angelino all my life. I am here today to represent small business owners like myself who support advancement of a comprehensive sign ordinance that allows digital signs on private and public property outside of Signs District. Thank you.
Thank you. Leonardo Villa and Vladimir Avila. That concludes our public comment. Any further questions or comments from committee members? Do you have any further questions? Nope. Bluffed. Thank you. Well, I think that gives us a much clearer picture now of what the economics are for an ordinance, and the staff has provided us a wide variety of planning or land use tools that we could use as we move forward. Those are two fundamental components of a balanced ordinance that we need, but we still need some additional information, and we would like to come back and start moving in a direction once we get this information. And with that, I'd like to ask the CLA to work with Building and Safety, City Planning, and CAO to provide a joint written report. I was going to say 30 days, but that would put us in council recess. So 45 days, does that put us over?
60.
60 days. In 60 days, with the following: Building and Safety with input from City Planning and CAO to report on the city's current enforcement activity, including a breakdown of all existing signs in terms of our various enforcement strategies and constraints. Also to develop and concept a fully staffed and funded citywide sign enforcement program, including annual renewal and inspection requirements and otherwise consistent with the needs identified in the subject report. Also to ask the CLA with input from City Planning and CAO to provide options on mechanisms and procedures that would most effectively incorporate the policy goals of this committee, and also identifying any differences in approach between a citywide versus publicly only context. And ask the CAO with input from Building and Safety and City Planning to develop an updated fee schedule and any related administrative considerations consistent with the resource needs identified in the subject report, including but not limited to enforcement fees, community benefit funds, and shared revenues. We could ask for those items to come back in 60 days, and I think we have sufficient information at that time to start moving in a direction that we could come to a solution to what many people refer to in this building, the zombie ordinance that gets nowhere. You guys giggled. You guys still awake? Okay. Good. So, anything else? Second by Mr. Fuentes. We'll see you all in this item in that time. Thank you very much. Any other items on the agenda?
Public comment, Council.
There are no public comment cards. Yes, we do. We have one. Mellow Desire. She spoke already. She's not here. Okay, that concludes this meeting. Thank you very much.